Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm so glad you could join us for this webinar for Change.org coaches and petition starters. At Change.org, we want every petition to be that's started on the platform to succeed and to win. And that's why we run the coaching program and why we run educational events like this one. My name's Carl Harris, and I'm a community manager here at Change.org. I run the coaches program and I run other special events to help Change.org petition starters to be successful on the platform. And with me tonight, I have Kate Davey. Kate is a writer with 10 years of experience in marketing. Kate also has a very deep passion for social justice and for empowering people. And she's worked professionally in human rights and international law. Kate's also a masterful storyteller, and Kate is responsible for many of the Change.org emails that you get in your email inbox. So a really fantastic storyteller, and we're very lucky to have Kate here tonight to share some of her expertise with us. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Now, just one thing before we kick off. I just wanted to say something quickly about questions. We're going to make time for plenty of your questions at the end of this this webinar. There are some questions that have been submitted in advance. You can also submit a question. There should be a questions tab on the bottom right of your screen at any time. If you want to ask a question, please add it there, and we'll deal with your question at the end when it comes time for questions. Great. So before we get, Kate, my first question, time to kick off.
Sure.
Well, look, I wanted to ask you, when you're working with a petition starter to write an email for a Change.org petition, who do you imagine that you are writing for when you're doing that?
That's a great question. And that's something that all of our coaches should keep in mind when they're working with petition starters is who is your audience? So you want to think about who are you writing this email or petition for? And what helps me to think of is I think of one person who epitomizes my audience, and then I write to that one person. If it helps, you can name that person and maybe even add a picture. And this is called an audience persona, and it helps you focus on what's most important to your audience. Because if you write to everyone, you're not going to reach anyone. So it's really important to keep one person in mind that you really want to reach with your petition. And some questions that are really important to ask yourself are, what would move this person to act about this petition? What argument do they care the most about? And why is this compelling to them? And when you answer those questions, you can help visualize your audience for yourself. And that will really help you when you're writing your petition or email.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. So I don't know about you, but like I often feel like I am inundated with information all the time between the emails that I get in my inbox and social media and notifications that I'm getting on my phone. I feel like there's this constant kind of fight for my attention all the time, and I think that's kind of new. And I wondered if that affects the way that you write.
Definitely. Also, Carl, you're not alone. I think that a lot of people feel that way. I know that I feel that way. I read a recent study that says that adults lose their concentration after 8 seconds. So as a writer, that means that you're working with a very short time frame. So we have to grab our audience's attention quickly. So that's something really important for coaches to keep in mind. You need a hook to grab your audience's attention right away.
Well, look, I mean, that's one of the things that I think you are, in particular, exceptionally good at is getting and holding your audience's attention. And that's why the emails that you write help petition starters to get so many signatures. So what advice do you have for petition starters about how to kind of grab people's attention and then move them to take action?
Sure. So when I'm working with the petition starter to write an email or helping them with a petition, some of the things that I keep in mind for keeping my audience's attention, the first thing I'm going to tell you is the most important thing I can share with you on this webinar tonight. And that is show, don't tell your readers your story. This is paramount to good storytelling, show, don't tell. So the difference is, like, for example, saying, I don't feel well versus I have 101-degree fever, a scratchy sore throat, and I haven't been able to leave my bed all day. So in the second example, we're giving our audience a very clear visual to imagine what we're writing. And in the first, we're simply telling them. And it's important to create this visual and show your readers, because we're more likely to hold on to thoughts that we can create an image from than we are just with words. And that's just how we're hardwired as human beings. We love storytelling, but the show, don't tell part is so important because we create like our own little movie in our head as we are reading or even listening to stories. The second point is to create an emotional connection. Make sure, make an emotional connection with your reader as soon as possible. As a petition starter or as a coach of a petition starter, you want to establish the personal reason you're starting this petition as soon as possible. So within the first few sentences, but definitely by the first paragraph, your audience should know why you're writing this petition and how you have a personal connection to this issue. That helps us get to their emotions, and then we use their emotions to engage them in our story. It also helps to get the audience on our side and really interested in what you're writing about. The third point is that you have to find your most compelling argument. And I know that that doesn't always seem easy, but I know that you guys can do it. In order to find the most compelling argument in your petition, you need to go back to how you feel about the issue you're starting a petition on, or you're helping someone start a petition on. How do you feel when you think about this? Do you get angry? Do you get sad? Does it make you want to scream? All of those are great things. You just need to use those. So by finding where you have the strongest emotional reaction around the issue you're starting a petition on or helping someone start their petition on, you can also find your most compelling argument. You use that emotion to then frame your argument. We want our audience to feel strongly enough about a petition to move them to sign the petition, which brings me to my final point, which is a clear call to action. And it does exactly what it says. It calls your audience to act. In our case, this means we're asking our audience to sign your petition. Calls to action need to be as clear as possible. And this is why I'm working with a petition starter. I make sure we include clear calls to action that state outright, sign my petition, because I find an effective formula for calls to action would be, could include, sign my petition plus the stakes that you're working on. And we'll get to stakes in a little bit to let you know too. But without a clear call to action, they may not feel that they need to sign your petition. They may not even know that they need to sign your petition. Yeah.
It's you can never be too clear with people about what it is that you want them to do. So, those are really good principles. Are there any things that you would say that petition starters need to absolutely make sure that they include in petitions?
Yes, definitely. So since this is our first storytelling webinar, I'm going to focus on the 4 most important things to include in every single petition you write or help someone else write as a coach. And as we move forward with more webinars, we'll go into more details and more storytelling elements to include. But for right now, we're going to focus on 4. So the first one is incredibly important. It's high and clear stakes. Stakes are what make us care. Stakes are what make us want to sign your petition. Stakes answer the question, so what and why do I care? It also answers why this petition or email is important. So to find your stakes, answer the following question. What is the worst thing that will happen if my petition doesn't achieve victory? So, as coaches, you're very familiar with Change.org and our petition. So some of these examples will seem familiar to you, but in our petitions, often our stakes will be that someone's life is at risk, someone might be evicted from their home, or maybe a law is going to be passed that will have a devastating impact on a petition starter's life, or if a law isn't passed, it could have a devastating impact on that person's life. So it's really important to include clear and high stakes so that you motivate your audience to get on board with your argument. My second point is you need to give your audience an incentive to act. And in order to move your audience to act, you need to make sure that you offer them an emotionally compelling argument and that you also show the petition starter's emotional connection to the petition. We also do this by making our readers feel like they're part of a larger movement, and that's really important to Change.org and what we're doing as a whole. This means that your petition isn't just about you changing this one particular issue, but it's about a larger movement for change in a particular area. So, for instance, when I worked with petition starters on the HB2 laws, the anti-transgender laws that some states have passed, we looked at how the petition would impact them personally, but also how it would impact millions of others. And by doing so, you're offering your audience a chance to be part of a larger movement than themselves, and a movement that they can help shape by sharing with their social networks and also by signing and commenting. And I mentioned this next point again before in my how to keep our audience's attention, but it's worth repeating because it's so important. The importance of a clear call to action. So we know what a call to action is, and we want to make sure that we're crystal clear as to what we're asking our audience to do and why. So in your call to action, make sure you specifically ask your audience to sign your petition and why they should sign your petition. You can do this in one sentence or two, depending on what you're able to, what you feel comfortable with. But you want to make sure that they know what you're asking them to do and why you're asking them to do it. And that why is extremely important. And this moves us to our last point, which is creating a sense of urgency. So when we create a sense of urgency with our audience, you increase the likelihood that your audience will follow your call to action and act right now, which is so important because if we don't get someone to act right away, it's very unlikely that they will come back and sign after they have, been working 8 to 10 hours, they've made dinner, they've helped their kids with homework. They're probably definitely not coming back to reread your email and or petition and sign it. So we need to get them to act as soon as they read it. And one of the best ways to do this is to include a deadline. So, maybe if a bill is coming up and it's going to be passed at the end of June, that means that you have to have people sign now so that lawmakers can see why people don't want this bill passed, or on the flip side, why people do want this bill passed. So by creating that deadline and that sense of urgency, you get people a lot more likely to act and support your petition. And those are my 4 main points to include everything. My 4 points to include in every petition or email that you write. And I think you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, or emails to colleagues or your family or whatever. If you want to get people to take action.
Yeah, anything. You want your mom to babysit or whatever it is. It's good to use that. Yeah.
Well, look, that's really, really great advice. I wonder if we can sort of talk through an example and see how you've kind of put that into action in your work.
Yeah, definitely. So as the storyteller for Change.org, I get to work on many amazing petitions and emails and speak with incredible petition starters and organizations. I feel so lucky to do that. I really, really do. And the petition I'm about to share with you is one of the petitions I'm most proud of and most honored that I was able to have the opportunity to work on. This woman is named Amanda Bernier, and she came to us through Hope for ALS. Her petition is one of the most emotionally compelling stories I have ever heard. It's truly heart-wrenching. I had to get tissues after reading her story, just fair warning. But before I go into her story, I'd like to talk to you about the importance of photos, of the photo you choose for your petition. Amanda's photo is perfect for so many reasons, and it conveys so much without even knowing any part of her story. So Carl, what does her photo convey to you?
Yeah, it's very compelling, I would say. So I feel like this photo, like I know a lot just from looking at this photo. You know, I know that this is a story about a mother and her child. I know that the mother in this case is pretty unwell. She's like obviously getting medical treatment. She's got equipment hooked up. Her baby is really little and is like, you know, clearly reliant on her.
Yeah.
And so I really feel for them, and I feel for this family, and I want it to turn out well for them.
That's exactly right. And I think anyone that looks at that photo feels the same way. So it's moving in and of itself. And what's so great about this photo is that it tells a story without knowing anything else about Amanda. So keep that in mind when you're looking for your photos. Try to, when possible, and I know it's not easy, but spend the time to really find the photo that best captures your story and include that photo, because that's going to go a long way. So get back to the story behind this petition. When I was first introduced to the petition, it hadn't done very well, which I was honestly really surprised by, because it's really compelling. It's really heartbreaking. It hadn't performed that well when we were just looking at the petition. It had around 1,200 signatures when we first started working on it. And by the time we had finished working on it with the storytelling elements we've talked about today, so high and clear stakes, incentive to act, clear call to action, and a sense of urgency, and showing, not telling, we were up to over 260,000 signatures.
That's pretty. What did you do to get all those signatures?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, we'll go through a couple of paragraphs of the email that I worked on with the petition starter and the organization. So the first paragraph, just gonna look at the slide with you. So the important thing is to remember goldfish. Like when you're writing, think of goldfish. We have 8 seconds to capture people's attention, which you guys know from before. So I wanted to get as much upfront as possible. So by the end of the first 2 sentences, we know this petition is from Amanda Bernier, who is a new mom to a beautiful baby girl, and that she has ALS, and that she has months to live. So in those 2 sentences alone, we've established an emotional connection, clear and high stakes, and a sense of urgency. So as far as storytelling elements are concerned, we're more than halfway there. Really, the second sentence really does have like the entire story almost in it, and it's right at the beginning. So this is one of the sentences I'm most proud of writing, because I know that seems so pedantic, but it is, because it gets so much of her story out in space.
No, it's a great sentence, and I know you talked before about showing, not telling. You know, are there examples of that in this paragraph?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for bringing that up. So if you look at, I'll just read through the sentence quickly. Before my diagnosis, I was running, working in a lab, and volunteering as a firefighter with my husband. 5 months later, I was hooked to a ventilator because I could not breathe on my own. So just the juxtaposition of those two sentences is pretty incredible, the journey that she has taken in 5 months. So we know that we have a healthy woman who is really engaged in her community. She's active in many different things going on. She has many different things going on in her life. To incredibly, 5 months later, she's hooked up to a ventilator because she can't breathe on her own. So just thinking of that in my head, I can see her, I can see her running races. I can see her as a volunteer firefighter, in working in a lab. And now I can see her laying in a bed, hooked up to a ventilator. And that's a really strong image to share with your users. So that goes back to showing, not telling, and that's really important for you to include.
Yeah, because it could just say like, I was really active and then I got sick, right? But that's not doing any of the doing any of the work.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly right. It could just say, it could be one sentence that says, I used to be active, but now I'm really sick. Well, I don't really, like, who cares? Like, and that comes back to the question that the stakes, this also shows us such high stakes. Like we care so much about her right away.
Yeah, it's a powerful introduction. Maybe we can look at the next paragraph.
Sure, absolutely. So this paragraph does a couple of things. So the first thing that it does is give you more information about Amanda and her daughter. So now it's not just a nameless baby. We know that the baby's name is Arabella Grace. And then we take that intimate connection now that the audience has with Amanda, with the petition starter, and we take it to the next level by introducing the nickname. So we know that this woman's nickname for her baby is Peanut. We know that they are a really tough little team, that they were told that Amanda wouldn't be able to make it to full term, and they did that together, and that Peanut wouldn't be able to breastfeed, and they did that together. So you have this amazing team of a mom and this sweet new little baby. And so we're rooting for them. We have this really strong emotional connection with them. And now you're on Amanda's team. I'm Team Amanda, I'm Team Peanut, and I'm willing to sign whatever I have to because I want this mom and this baby to have as much time together as they possibly can. So creating that strong emotional connection there by including details like that, like nicknames, really breaks down the walls, and your audience will feel more connected to your petition.
Yeah, those little personal details can make a huge difference.
Yes, definitely.
Well, look, maybe we can take a look at the last paragraph.
Sure.
Yeah.
So now we've set people up. This is where you want your audience. They're, like we were saying, pro Team Amanda, pro Team Peanut. We want this mom and little girl to have as much time together as possible, and we want to help them in any way. So now we're bringing them to the problem that they're hoping to rectify through this petition, which is that the FDA won't approve accelerated approvals to promising ALS treatments. And in it, I write, unbelievably, because to me and the petition starter, it is truly unbelievable that the FDA has refused to apply any ALS medications to the accelerated approvals, because the FDA says ALS kills people too quickly to even try. But for those of us that are now emotionally connected to Amanda and her baby, we don't care about what the FDA thinks. We want to get this mom the chance to have more time with her baby. And so I don't know about you, but that makes me so angry. And that's how, we went to find our strongest compelling argument, because this is what is infuriating about this petition, is that, you have all these families and people like Amanda who just want a little bit more time with their families, as much time as they can have. And the FDA isn't even willing to try to let them. So we have a very clear call to action here. It leads us to the clear call to action, asking the FDA to apply accelerated approvals to promising ALS treatments.
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting emotional journey, right, along the kind of early part of that email. Like the very early parts are all about sort of tenderness and concern, and then here it's like really pushing kind of outrage and anger.
Absolutely, definitely, and that's okay. That's a great point, Carl. That is okay. You want to take your readers on an emotional journey. So don't be afraid to do that when you're working with petition starters. That's okay.
And so I'm interested, obviously we've been talking about, this is what we've looked at is an email that, people like the emails that people might see in their inboxes from Change.org. But how do these principles apply to a petition?
So exactly the same. If you are writing an article, or you're writing a blog post, or you're writing a letter to a friend and you want them to do something, these are these elements: high and clear stakes, incentive to act, clear call to action, and a sense of urgency. And also an add in here, doing all of those things through showing, not telling. These components should be included in every single thing that you write, and it's just going to make your writing that much better. So yes, we're talking specifically about petitions and emails for Change.org here, but these elements that we're giving you about storytelling, you can really use in every area that in every area of your writing.
Yeah, well, that's really useful advice, that this is so transferable. Look, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your process for writing, because I see some of this. I share an office with you, Kate, and
Yes.
I know how much kind of hard work and research and thought goes into creating these emails with petition starters. So yeah, I wondered if you could share a little bit about how you approach writing, and whether you had any advice for coaches and petition starters about how to do that as well.
Sure, that's a great question. So every writer's process is going to be different, but the thing that I guess my biggest piece of advice is to relax as much as possible. No one writes well when they're stressed out, and that's true. No one thinks well when they're stressed out. No one lives well when they're stressed out. And so when you're trying to write a petition or coach someone that's writing a petition, first thing is take a deep breath, relax. You're going to do it. You're going to do a great job. You have these storytelling elements. You're going to be wonderful. And one of the ways that I relax when I'm at work is I'll make myself a cup of tea. If you're at home and you prefer a glass of wine or maybe a little bit of whiskey, whatever it is that works for you, to relax a little bit and just get into the flow of things for writing, I suggest that. And then once at least I can speak for myself, when I have my first draft written, then I go back and I just make revisions after revision after revision. And something important too for people who are just starting out with petitions or coaching petition starters, it's important to remember to give yourself space to not be great right away. That's okay. That's going to happen. Your first draft is meant to not be great. That's why it's a first draft. Let everything come out, and then you can go back. And that's what a second draft and a third draft, and sometimes a fourth draft is for. And it's okay that, also, I just can't emphasize this enough. It's okay that your first draft isn't going to be amazing, but don't let that stop you. Keep going. Don't let that be the obstacle that makes you say, gives up, because it's crazy to do that when you are absolutely capable of doing it. And I know that you are. Trust me. I believe in your ability to do it. And one last piece of advice I'd have about my writing process, or for anyone that wants to use it, is I will always have a friend or a colleague look over my the petition that I've worked on, or if like a petition starter and I have worked on a email together, or a petition starter and I have worked on a petition together, whatever it is, or blog post, I will always have a colleague look at it and let me know if they feel compelled to act. So if it's a blog post, they feel compelled to share this. And if it's a petition that I've helped write with a petition starter, is it something that they would sign? Or if it's an email that I helped write with a petition starter, is it something that they would not only sign, but share on Facebook perhaps? And so when they say that they would, I know that I'm on the right path. And so feel free to do that with like a family friend, or a family member, your mom, whoever is a fan of yours in your writing.
That's great and really useful, I think, for people to hear. You know, sometimes it takes a few drafts to get it to be where it needs to be. Yes, absolutely. Well, look, I wondered if you had any kind of takeaway advice for petition starters. You know, is there any kind of last bit of advice that you want to give?
Sure. So there are a couple of things. The first thing is, please use these components, use the slides, the 4 steps to success, and the 4 components to include in your storytelling. That will really make a difference. I promise that it will. And then also we have a takeaway for you in the slides. It's questions to ask yourself as you're writing. So is your content emotionally compelling? What are the stakes you're sharing? Are the stakes high? Did you create imagery, a scene that your audience can visualize? Did you include a deadline or a sense of urgency in your content? What do you want your audience to do? Do you have a specific and clear call to action? So those are really good questions to ask yourself. You can even print that out and just keep it next to your computer as you're writing. I find that that's really helpful.
Yeah, and so these are questions that you could use to sort of review content. You could, if you're a coach, you could use them with a petition starter. Yeah, that's a really excellent resource.
Yes, please, coaches, please use this. Absolutely.
We'll make sure that gets shared in the Facebook group and everybody has access to it.
Great.
Well, look, we're ready to kind of move on to questions, but is there anything else you wanted to kind of share with coaches and petition starters before we do?
Yeah, just, again, I can't reiterate this enough. Stick with it. You're going to get it. You will be great. I've been doing this for over 10 years, and so it wasn't easy for me when I first started either, and that's okay. You just have to stick with it, and that's true whether you're writing your first petition or your 20th. It's going to get easier as you go along, and don't give up, because if you use these storytelling elements, I guarantee you your writing will be better. I know it. You're going to be great. Just stick with it. And also, lastly, just thank you to all the coaches for all the work that you're doing with petition starters, because that's just so important to help them make that change. And by including these storytelling elements, I really hope that will help you with your coaching.
Great. Well, we've got a couple of questions that have been submitted already from coaches, and we will get to those. If you're watching and you have a question, there should be a little button on the bottom right of your screen that you can hit, and you can share a question with us, and we'll deal with it. We'll get you an answer. Kate, our first question that was sort of submitted before today is from a coach called Nelson Oliverieta. And Nelson's question is that with so many urgent issues, how do we tell our story to make it feel personal to the people we're asking to sign and share? Do you have any advice for Nelson?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nelson. So I think that it comes back to a couple of things. The first being that emotional connection that you establish with your audience. So what is your personal connection to, or the petition starters' personal connection to the issue that they're writing about, that they're starting their petition on? That's really important, and that will get you very far, because your petition starter's personal connection to that issue is what is going to make people care, and is what is going to make your petition really stand out from others. So focus on that, but also the other thing that I would say focus, besides all of the storytelling elements that we've talked about tonight, would be your stakes. So focus on the emotional connection that petition starter has to the issue, but also the stakes, like, and how high are the stakes, and just be able to answer why should anyone care? Why should I care about this? I think that will help you go far. Carl, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, because I know a little bit about the kind of context of what Nelson is working on. So
sure.
Nelson has, as a petition starter, worked on, the Syrian kind of refugee crisis that's going on at the moment.
Oh, wow.
And has also coached petition starters who are working on corruption issues. And sometimes with those kind of big, broad issues that affect a lot of people, it can be difficult to make that emotional connection.
Yes.
One really good way to do it, and maybe you have other advice related to this, Kate, but one really good way to do it is to bring like big, broad issues down to the level of kind of individual people and how they're affected by the issue, and telling those stories about one person, one family, or a particular person, to kind of demonstrate the how the problem kind of plays out.
Right. Yeah, and I think I'm really glad that you said that, Carl, because I think also, as you were saying that, the image that I got in my head is if you pan out to like an audience of people. So let's say we're, of the Super Bowl, like the audience at the Super Bowl, and in the stands you see tens of thousands of people. But if you hone in, imagine like that's what Nelson, you can do this with your work that you're doing on Syria or Syrian refugees, is that you really want to bring the camera into that one person, bring it into that one family that you're talking about, and that's how you're going to make people care, rather than looking at huge numbers and kind of theoretical, not theoretical, but more larger groups of people are harder to have more of a personal connection than if you're talking about like one child, one family. So that's a great point, Carl.
Yeah, it's much easier to relate to individuals or like small numbers of people than it is to a big group.
Yes, absolutely.
That I feel like that's a great bit of information, and I'm glad Nelson asked that question.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So Chaz Swingle asked a question about structure for petitions. So curious to know Kate's perspective on how to structure a compelling petition. Often we're told that we should put the bottom line up front, but with petitions we want to draw readers in by connecting with them. Do you have any recommendations for balancing this?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chaz. These are very good. So I don't think it has to be an either or situation. If we go back to Amanda's case, we included a lot of information and a lot of storytelling elements in the first two sentences. And so as you get better at writing petitions, that's going to be easier to do. But I don't think it has to be in either or situation. Carl, I'd love to hear if you have anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, I mean, like just thinking about the example of the email for Amanda's petition, you put a lot about the like stakes, you introduced who Amanda was, you talked about the stakes, you created that emotional connection. You didn't put the ask to people until kind of the third paragraph. So until you were sort of sure that you'd made that emotional connection. So, and I think that's good, like general advice as well, right? Like putting the emotional hooks up front, and then once you're sure that you've kind of got people, then making the asks about what you want them to do. Yeah,
I think that's great. Very well said.
Well, it was a great email that you wrote.
Well, thank you. Didn't mean to set myself up there for a compliment. Thank you.
Well, look, we haven't had any other questions submitted. So look, unless people have any kind of last-minute questions that they want to submit now, things that they're wondering about, things that have come up based on what we've said, we might finish a few minutes early.
Great. Very good.
Well, look, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Kate. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise tonight, and hopefully we'll have you back to talk to coaches again soon.
Yes, I would love to. And thank you so much, Carl, for putting this together. I had so much fun. And also, just again, I really want to say thank you to the coaches for all the hard work they're doing, working with petition starters. It's so important, and keep up the good work.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and good night and good luck.
Bye.
Bye.